The following podcast is an Embassy Row production.
Welcome back to the Shaken and Stirred Show. I'm Nigel Barker in a very, very rainy New York, and I'm with my great friend and co-host, Tom Astor. Tom, where are you right now, mate?
In my kitchen. Well, been in my kitchen in Oxfordshire.
Are you at home?
I'm at home. I got home.
Oh my goodness! I thought you were out and about. I didn't realise. Last time I spoke to you, you were by the seaside.
I went to the seaside for a couple of nights, for a couple of days, just to try and get a bit of different, just to pull myself away from the monotony of my surroundings. But I realised in the end that all I was doing is trying to run away from myself, which never worked. So I came home. How about you?
You're right there, Tommy. Right where we wanted you to be. And I'm glad you made it back in time for the Shaken and Stirred Show. We have an amazing guest this week. Super, super cool. Someone who I've been trying to get for some time. Very happy we've actually got her for this particular episode. It's going to be very, very cool. In the meantime, Tom, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking. So earlier on this evening, I had dinner with some people who spent a bit of lockdown on my farm, locked up in a cottage here. And unbeknownst to me, when they were here, they went off and picked during the winter some of my sloe berries. And I had dinner with them tonight. I hadn't seen them for a while. And they presented me this rather nice bottle of sloe gin that they'd made with sloes from my farm. So I thought it only appropriate to, it's not really a cocktail as such. I mean, you could put champagne in it and make it a slow gasm, I suppose. You could fizz it up a bit, but I'm just going to go with a straight slow gin. It's basically slow gin. So it's gin and sloes from my farm.
Amazing. How fantastic. It looks absolutely divine. I love
the colour of that. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it looks amazing. So wait a second. Yeah. If you put champagne in slow gin, it's called a slow gasm?
Yeah. It's a highly effective drink if you want to get pissed quickly.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, if you wanted to have a slow orgasm, that would be, a lot of people would use that actually to slow things down.
I imagine that's the last thing you're going to have when you drink too much of that. Anyway, yeah.
There you go. Well, maybe that is indeed why one has a slow gasm.
What do you drink, Nige?
You've
got a very complicated cocktail you're now about to tell us all about.
I do actually have a very complicated cocktail. I was given a book, a rather beautiful book called The Art of the Japanese Cocktail. Look at that absolutely beautiful book, The Art of the Japanese Cocktail, full of unbelievable photographs of cocktails. And I kind of have been digging through this beautiful book, and I came across one that I could have made, partly because I think I want to make all of them, but I don't have all the ingredients, which is part of the problem because there's a lot of Japanese ingredients. But I found one called the Far East Side, which essentially is sake, which I was able to get a nice dry sake, 2 ounces of dry sake with a quarter of an ounce of elderflower liqueur, which I also have, a half ounce of tequila, and I used some of my Los Sundays Blanco, and a quarter ounce of fresh lemon juice. And that was all just mashed around. And it's an interesting drink. It was actually created by a bartender called Kenta Goto, who's a New York City bartender who won American Bartender of the Year in 2011. And, has done all kinds of great cocktails. And here it is. I haven't tried it yet. So cheers, mate.
Yeah, cheers. I want to see you drink that before we do our podcast because that is lethal.
Lethal.
Chin chin.
Yeah, it is lethal, but it's such a combination of stuff. Woo! Okay, the elderflower. I've never had elderflower with tequila and then add sake. It's like
that's got to work. It's got to work. No brain.
Yeah. Okay. Kicking in. Wow, yeah, it's interesting. What a lot of flavors. That's delicious. Booze news. Not the 9 o'clock news, folks, but booze news. Well, there's some interesting thing happened. There's been a lot of these stories of people being generous, leaving big tips at restaurants during the pandemic. People feeling sorry for restaurant staff and bartenders, and leaving sort of enormous, massive tips. Well, a mysterious customer took a seat at a bar at the Stumble Inn Bar and Grill in Londonderry, New Hampshire, June 12th. And they ordered simply 2 chili dogs, a Coke, fried pickles, a pint of seasonal Sam Adams, and they even got themselves a shot of Patron Silver. Guys, if you're going to drink tequila, I could think of some other ones. But anyway, the tab came to a glorious $37.93, and the man left a $16,000 tip. $16,000 on a 30 cent. Now, the owner of the actual restaurant said there must be a mistake. You made a mistake, sir. And the guy turned around and said, no, actually, I'm giving $16,000 because I believe in your staff of your restaurant. And they should. Here's a rather generous tip to give back. Now, the owner, Mr. Zarello, who had originally thought this was a typo, decided to split the bill between the 12 members of staff that work there, and this worked out at around $1,333 a pop. Now, you'd think that would be fair. There's a bunch of people, when they talked about this on social media, they went on Instagram and they went on Twitter, and they said that they had done this, and there was a lot of backlash from people saying that although, I guess dividing it up might be fair, surely his server who got the tip should have got the whole thing, the whole $16,000. Yeah. What do you think, Tom? The bartender, that the server should have got 16 grand, or split it evenly between everyone in the restaurant?
The server. You tip the server, right? And then if the server then wants to get generous and go, ooh, I feel a little bit like this is like I've done quite well today, I'm going to show my tips, then do it. But I mean, how often does that happen? No, the server should have got it.
There you go, people.
And I to add a little bit of a little bit of je ne sais quoi. The other servers there should have patted him on the back, or her on the back, given her or him a hug, and said how happy they were for them to have received such a great tip. And wow, maybe one day the same thing would happen to them. That is what I would have expected.
Blues News, people, and there you hear it from the Astor.
Yeah, well, I do feel also, though, that my response might be quite appropriate with tonight's guest. It's a question that you should ask tonight's guest, because I think you may get a similar response to the one I gave, or it may not. I don't know.
We will find out. Our guest today has a doctorate in clinical psychology, specializing in the integration of Western psychology and Eastern philosophy. She's an expert in family dynamics and personal development. She's written 5 books, 3 of which are New York Times bestsellers, including her 2 landmark books, The Conscious Parent, which I have, and The Awakened Family. Oprah has endorsed her work as revolutionary and life-changing, with her new book, Radical Awakening, out now, and next to her, as I can see it as I'm looking at her, please welcome the wonderful Dr. Shefali. How are you?
Good. I'm so happy to be here. I'm very intrigued by your show, and I couldn't be more happy to be a part of it.
You're absolutely so sweet. Well, we actually got connected by Deborah Lee Furness, who we are big fans of, and Debs and I go back a little bit. I'm friends with Hugh, her husband, and when I was watching her personal Instagram, and she, just to her friends on her private account, was touting how wonderful and amazing you are, and I immediately said, "Can you make the introduction?" And here we are, which is wonderful. Dr. Shefali, what are you drinking? What is your drink of choice?
Well, I'm a real lightweight drinker, I am ashamed to admit, but I always only have either a Moscato or a Prosecco. So I'm having a Prosecco. And then to add to the sweetness, I put lemonade in it because I really like my alcohol sweet. So that's
I love it.
How I like it.
We'll drink to that. Cheers.
Cheers,
my dear. There you go. Boom. Sweetness. So Sweet, when it comes to, obviously, as a psychologist, and we're going to move on to everything else as well, but I'm curious from a psychological standpoint, alcohol obviously is a mind alterer and puts people in a certain state. Do you have an opinion on the actual consumption of alcohol and it's whether it's okay in general? I mean, a lot of people who are in this world, who we've spoken to in the past, do have some kind of sort of opinion on it.
Well, more than being a psychologist. So as a therapist, I see alcohol being used and abused all the time as a number, a distractor, a suppressor. But then more than that, as a meditator, I've had to really, because I've been meditating since I was 21, and I used to drink much, much more unconsciously when I was in my 20s. I then grew to understand how clouded my mind became, inebriated, intoxicated. I wasn't conscious, I wasn't present. And that's the whole point of alcohol, right? So that you don't have to be present. And that's where you're uninhibited, you're more free, and so that begs the question, why do we need to get to that state of inebriation in order to be our most authentic self? So as I've grown older, I've actually walked away from it, challenging myself to stay present and to be my authentic, carefree, uninhibited self without a substance. It's not easy, but that's my challenge.
Now, I knew you'd have a wonderful answer that would probably put us all to shame as well. At the same time, all of a sudden, I'm looking at my cocktail, going, "You're clouding my judgment. I'm not radically awakened at this particular."
Nigel, I've got the opposite. I'm looking at the doctor, and I'm thinking all that talk about in my 20s. You look like you're about 22. So I'm not sure how seriously I can take your last comment.
Right. You while giving me a compliment, you disparage my opinion, but I like that.
English.
I like that. A
challenge to disparage.
Yes.
The backhanded compliment. Very good at that, for sure.
He actually didn't like what I said, but he didn't know how to say it politely. So he's like, let me give her a compliment, and then totally cut her. Okay, we know your strategy.
No, I wouldn't do that. I'm polite. Don't worry.
Of course not. The break them down and build them up strategy. We've seen that one 100 times. Dr. Shefali, I'd love to know. Look, I mean, I've obviously listened to several interviews with you. I've followed you for some time, and obviously your interviews with Oprah are amazing. She's obviously a big fan of everything you do and say. I'd love to know about just your childhood, where you came from a bit what gives you the background into all of this, because there's a lot of incredible wisdom that comes out of your books and everything that you say, but where did it for you, if you enlighten us a little bit on where it comes from, where it started?
It's a mystery to me too, but if you want to just a brief chronology, I grew up in India, and at a very young age did intuitively understand that I was being suppressed. And I intuitively understood that this patriarchy that was very traditional and oppressive in India was killing me. I knew this by the age of 12. I was begging my father to, send me away, even though I had a perfectly amazing family and I grew up, quote unquote, in relative comfort. I just intuitively knew that my voice as a female was not being heard, and I needed to get the hell away. However, being a protective father, he didn't let me go until I was 21. And when I left India, I knew I would never come back. Now, not to glamorize the West, but I just needed to be away from my oppressive traditional culture and find myself. And as soon as I landed in America, within the first 6 months, I enrolled myself in my first 10-day silent Vipassana meditation retreat, and just exploded from there and began finding myself. And I was studying psychology, and I did my master's, and I did my PhD. I began teaching meditation. I began coaching people, and I just began understanding that the human plight and the human enigma was my great fascination. And I've been on that path ever since.
Radical awakening, you're latest book, it's quite something. And you've spoken to me about it a little bit in the past, just briefly. But when you listen to we see what's written on the cover too. You have turn pain into power, embrace your truth, live free. Simple things to some extent they sound, except when you really dig into them, they're incredibly complicated and difficult for a lot of people. Just the last one, the live free. We live in America where people talk about freedom all the time. I mean, it's a sort of a mantra in America. I mean, I'm English originally, but since I've been here, you just hear people, the land of the free, and freedom of speech, and everything's about free. But actually, we don't live free, do we? We're completely trapped. Talk to us about what you mean here, and I'd love to know first of all what you mean, but then we'll get into if you're able to talk to us through about how one does become free, because I think we obviously can realize we're not, but how do you get that?
Freedom is not an intellectual concept as it's made out to be, and it's certainly not just an empty lip service. So we are definitely not free. We are without much exception, except for those who have really been on the path of awakening. All the others have been mired and enslaved by conditioning. And whether we like it or not, we all grew up pretty unconsciously by unconscious parents in an unconscious culture. And we have created institutions that have further fortified this enslavement. And we don't want to look at that because we are tethered to these institutions. They are our belief systems. So, the Buddha always said that nirvana or liberation is the emptiness of beliefs, meaning the divestment of beliefs, no beliefs. Because beliefs, by their very nature, are a tethering to an intellectual concept, which is completely constructed by us, and we're not the most wise. But you can't say this to people because it's like telling the emperor he has no clothes. We are in a bubble. We're in a matrix of absolute, to me, ludicrous belief systems. And we're mired to them, and we believe they are our identity. And this is the cause of suffering. And until people are bold enough and daring enough to break free from this, we will not even touch what can be called authentic freedom. So in my first few books, Conscious Parenting and The Awakened Family, I didn't know I was about to set off a revolution in parenting. I was just talking such basic wisdom, like basic pedestrian wisdom, but it was so anti the traditional model of parenting that it was called revolutionary, and that's really the tragedy. What I'm talking about is just very basic. It's just to follow the laws of nature and don't impose constructed belief systems without knowing that they're artificial. At least know that they're artificial. And people are afraid, and we're completely zombified and robotic in these ways that we're tethered, sheep to the slaughterhouse, I say, and we don't even know it.
You talked about, obviously just then we were talking about religion, organized religion. You are coming from a country like India, which obviously has Buddhism and potentially Hinduism, depending where you are, and Christianity and Muslim faith, and there's a lot of different religions going on there. But everywhere you go, you find religion, and certainly the more politically high up in the political system you go, the more it's entrenched all the way through. So, in which case, what you're suggesting, with these sort of ideas and beliefs, I mean, I actually literally 100% agree with you, and I have always felt this way, to be honest, that there are so many ludicrous sort of, I guess, ideas, concepts that we have created around religion to organize ourselves, to control people, to sort of manage the population. And that's what in many respects religion was designed for in the first place. But we now live by it as if it is the sort of literally struck down by a god, like it says, like a lightning bolt wrote it on a piece of slate, and therefore it's fact, and we can't question it no matter what. And if you do, it's like, well, you have to have faith. Faith is blind, so therefore, and
if you don't, you're a heathen. But it's not just religion, it's all the institutions, education, the institution of wealth, success, beauty, marriage, divorce, all of these institutions are mass controlled, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, okay. So then, so so knowing that, I mean, you must have had an incredible amount of pushback too from people. I mean, this is. I mean, obviously, right. So that, although people like Oprah and various people and a lot of people with common sense, when you read what you've written, it makes sense. But then when you sort of acknowledge it and sit back for a second, you kind of look out the window and think, well, how? Because I'm going to run up against a brick wall with anybody I say things like this to or speak to about this. So how do people use this sort of this concept, and what's the next step for them to do to sort of go out and sort of practically awaken themselves or whatever, or ignore these constraints or get past that?
Yeah, the beautiful thing about life is that these institutions, these very adherences, these very strictures that we die for, they will make us suffer, and they will bring us to our knees, either here or there or somewhere. The beautiful thing about life is that because they're bubbles, that we're holding on to. So eventually the cracks of life and time will burst these bubbles, whether you like it or not, and you will be on your knees. The therapists call that rock bottom. And I talk about it in my book, that rock bottom is a wonderful portal. It's the portal you're waiting for, because it means that your false ways of living are crumbling. They will not last because they are bubbles. And so when that happens, you're given a portal. So to your question, how? Sadly, when I was 21, I went voluntarily to go seek wisdom. So few of us voluntarily seek wisdom, but that's very rare. Most of us are broken, shattered, shaken and stirred and dumped in the gutter. And then maybe we'll say, is it something in my way of thinking? Is it something in me? Maybe if you're lucky, you get to that place. And then you begin the reconstruction process. But there's a death. And that's what we're afraid of, right? We all want liberation, but we don't understand to liberate, we need to let go. I always speak about growth. Growth is not an additive process in the spiritual journey. It's a subtractive process. So you have to die, you have to release, you have to let go, you have to untether, you have to deconstruct. So, I ask people, what do you want? You want transformation, you want epiphany, you want change, you want liberation, but you want to cling to everything you were. So the two are completely against odds with each other.
Can I turn the button here? When I was about 37, I went on a similar journey to, I would imagine, what you did when you were 21. So I reached what you'd consider to be rock bottom, and I realized that, there had to be more to how I was feeling. I didn't know how I was feeling. I was feeling awful. I was feeling really awful and really sad, depressed, and I was such great, and I kind of came from I had a lot. I had been given a lot. I had a great life, and I had 3 great children, and I just never felt so awful. So I went on a little journey to go and try and find out why, because I realized I couldn't do it on my own. I didn't know why I was feeling so bad and so awful and sad and all the rest of it. And over a period of about 3 or 4 years, I went on an amazing journey and discovered all sorts of things, and which in turn, 10 years later, is still, I was talking to my girlfriend today about synchronicity and enlightenment and unburdening yourself, and we were having discussions about, I don't know, we were doing having discussions about all sorts of things, but it basically kind of enlightenment and the opening yourself up. And during the period when I went and got help, I went to see a woman called Dr. Jean Knox, who was a sort of senior. She was a Jungian psychoanalyst, and she's in her 60s. She'd been, she's well versed. She's written books on psychology and self-agency and all the rest of it. And she was extraordinary. And I'd like to say that she saved my life, but she didn't, because I was the one who went to her, right? So she didn't. I mean, she just sat there and and was incredibly instrumental in helping me. And I asked her one day, I said to her one day, having studied the kind of human condition for so long, is there anything that still surprises you? And I've said this before to people, and it's an amazing amount of people who don't really understand her response. I said, is there anything that still surprises you about the human condition? And she said, well, yeah. She said the fact that 98% of the population still live in a state of self-deception on a daily basis, right? Which is what you've just been referring to. And she immediately, as soon as I hauled her up on it, I think at the time I was also saying, what do I need to do? And there was a sort of bit of an issue of, maybe I need to socialize a bit more. And I started castigating. I say, well, you just narrowed it down to 2%, it was literally that conversation. If that's the case, and I don't know if you agree or not, but if you're going to sit there with what you just described, that 98% of the population live in a state of self-deception on a daily basis. We're all living in a state of self-deception without even allowing ourselves to hit rock bottom. Yeah. How, other than let's try and teach basic psychology in schools and make people more self-aware of who they are and what they stand for, actually as human individuals, take them in the classroom and give people individuality, make them stand up for and feel, Other than educating children, how else do you think, and I know your books, obviously, some people may connect with your books, some people may just buy them and just read them and not get it, How, if there's going to be a sea change so that we can educate people to enlightenment, to the values of enlightenment and what it feels like to be enlightened and what it feels like to be free and not actually care what people think and actually not care what people say and understand that it's other people's problems, not your own, and be free. How, because it's a feeling I have, and it's a feeling I'd love to share. I'd love everyone to be on the same boat. It would make everything so much actually more fun and interesting. I think how, other than just teaching children, is that going to, how's that going to happen? How can that happen?
Yeah, 2% is very generous of her. I say the 0.0000001% of the 1%. Okay, so I don't know what she's talking about, but she's obviously optimistic and didn't want to scare you and wanted you to feel you could still have a few friends. So people always go, but then how? Who will I be friends with? I go, I don't know, one good person? That's a lot. No, I know it's a dismal painting that I stroke in midair. But the point is this, that it takes wisdom seekers and wisdom teachers, and there aren't many. So this is just something you have to accept as a wisdom seeker and a teacher. I've learned to accept that the mainstream, the drive, the main populace of the matrix will always go towards the unconscious. And it's sad. People are broken and people are living in false self. And to wake up takes tremendous gumption, courage, evolution. You have to already be at an evolved state to enter the state of evolution. So it's something I let go in my 20s, because I also, like you, had angst and despair and impatience to change the world, to show people, Plato's allegory of the cave was my favorite allegory. One went out of the cave to see where the shadows were formed. It was the sun. And he came back and said, come with me, my brothers and sisters. And no one left the cage in the cave. And this is so here. And I had to let go and go through a mass extinction of my own delusion that I could change anybody. It is something that people have to come to. Now, having said that, yeah, we should be doing mass education in schools and teaching, but we can't, because the education system is mired in delusion and the parenting institution is mired in delusion. And that's why I started my first few books with parents, to show them how off course they were, how completely deluded because it starts with the parent, to impinge upon the parent your own sense of lostness and your own incompletion and ask the kid to complete you. So I tried my best to do that. But it's very slow coming, because it takes a certain willingness and a wantingness to be a seeker. Not everyone is a seeker. Most people are just consumers and robotic reactors. And that's just the level that, everyone is not at the same level of consciousness to begin with. So you have to just accept that. And then the 0.00001% of the 1% that do it, you know, you can quote unquote hope. I don't really use the word hope with any hope. You can hope that there will be a tidal wave eventually, but I don't do the work for that. I do the work just for this moment and whoever shows up in the moment.
What happens if we don't do the work?
Well, it is what we're seeing. It will be an extinction as we're seeing, and we will destroy because we have no consciousness about where to stop. You know, because we're so imaginative and so creative and so intelligent, we're just not very wise, and there's no stop button, and we're just destroying. The domination of the planet continues till we have already taken over the land, the sea, the air, the outer space now, and we will destroy. We are on the path. We are already at the bottom of the other side of progress, and we're already there. It's already in decimation.
Dr. Shefali, are we too late? You can't say it with such a smile on your face either. You've got such a...
Because I just accept, you know, I'm sorry, that's my meditative side, to just accept wherever we are. Otherwise, you're going to go crazy. So you just accept that this is the major thrust of the unconsciousness, what to do. So how I wake up every day with great joy is to say, okay, while I'm here in this incarnate form, I am bloody not going to suffer the unconsciousness around me, and I'm certainly not going to add to it. So how can I alleviate it? And I do my little literal 10 cents. It's not even $1's worth of anything, but I do it with great purpose and passion and optimism. And I refuse to waste my present moment. And I refuse to be unequanimous because of other people's carnage of the earth. You know, there's carnage going on, carnage. And the earth has been responding. The earth has been screaming. Our children scream back at us, but who's paying attention, right? So I do my part. I clamor, I yell, I scream. I wake up every day with renewed optimism to be a wake-up caller. But that's all I can do, you know. But I also see the great resistance, you know.
Without doubt. I mean, the great resistance is, I think, something we all experience on a constant level. I mean, obviously I've got 2 kids of my own, and I when I look at what the earth that they're inheriting, you also wonder if they're even going to inherit it. You know, at this point, you know, there's the clock that seems to be ticking is ticking ever faster. And it sounds like, okay, you're total doomsday at this point. You're, oh, come on. And, you know, and I grew up actually with my father literally on a daily basis telling me that the world was coming to an end, you know, that it would be sort of over any, and it was all written in the Bible too, FYI, like look at all the you know, the end of days and, you know, all the plagues and the heat waves and the
all of this will continue though. I mean, the beautiful thing is that we will just have an unsustainable existence, but the earth will continue. I mean, that's just, it's continued before us. It'll continue at, you know, it just, we may not be able to sustain in this moment, which is good. It's okay. So now we die, nothing wrong with us dying. We're not that special. And then the next version of whoever, whatever, and however will come to be. You know, energy will continually mutate and transform. It's just, it will be unsustainable for us. And that's a jolly good lesson because we've really done this to ourselves. So, you know, we can't really cry. And yeah, we should be utterly guilty and ashamed of what we're leaving to our children. Like, bye, see ya, I'm dying soon. But what are we leaving for them? But this is just the way it is. I mean, you know, this is the unconsciousness that is the human mind. The human mind is a dangerous mind. It's a deluded mind. And your therapist said the right word. I say it all the time. It's the delusion. It's the deluded mind that believes in false belief systems. I mean, people really think going to the moon is the right thing to do. I mean, really, I mean, and maybe you do too, so I'm sorry if I'm opposing you, but it is utterly delusional to go to the moon when we can't even survive here. And now we're going to go and destroy the ecosystem somewhere else. And this is what we've done. We started with the earth and we went to the oceans and we went to the skies. Now we're going intergalactic and we're destroying everywhere we go. Other species don't destroy, we destroy. And yet we exalt ourselves because we're deluded. We have narcissism and delusion to believe that we're special, but we're not. We're utterly destructive creatures. We're creative, but we're also utterly destructive.
Do you, I mean,
can I ask?
Go ahead.
Sorry, can I ask a question on, literally as a question as in, seeking an answer on this one. The concept, well, the reality, the idea of synchronicity and enlightenment, right? They're two things that exist and coexist in your life at the moment.
Well, I don't know what you mean by either, so I won't just say
synchronicity, as in what people call, synchronicity, as in, people might call it coincidence. So the more you open your mind to things, the more you are, and I don't know if this happens in meditation, but the more you open your mind, the more concepts and ideas flood in, and then the more seeming coincidences happen. If you've not heard of synchronicity, which is
I'll tell you why I'm a little careful in these words, because people, then attribute lots of things to synchronicity.
Yeah. Well, no, synchronicity, but I mean, the way, I suppose, the way Vedanta said it, on the way to, what I was going to ask you is what is how the concept of synchronicity, as written about by someone like Vedanta, with the concept of enlightenment, how do you see how do the two things? I mean, I've got my sort of very much kind of like amateur way of figuring out what I think it means, but I'm kind of interested to know if it's something that is something that you think about, or that's kind of like part of that is in your life or forms part of your day or something, Okay,
so enlightenment is on a continuum, and it's never going to be reached by any mortal right now. So it's a utopic. So what I would rather call in its place is the extinction of false beliefs, right? So in a practical way, what is enlightenment is when your mind is untethered to false beliefs. You're free of false beliefs. Your mind has space and is connected to the interconnectedness of all. That's what I call And then synchronicity, I don't use the word synchronicity because you can attribute any. So if you're thinking of a rose, and then your friend whose name is Rose calls you, you're like, wow, I'm amazing. I just manifested that. So I don't, people tend to attribute things out of their desire to be special, right? Ultimately, we're all looking for control, which is why religions did what they did, to have some control over the uncontrollable universe. But what I prefer to use instead of synchronicity is just alignment. So when you are very clear from within you, your outer life dissolves in terms of extraneous bullshit. You just cut away the bullshit. And your external life aligns with your internal life. So you're just flowing, you don't have extra bullshit because of your desire for validity or worth from the external world. So there's, I don't know about synchronicity, if my life is more synchronous, but it's definitely more aligned. And, quote unquote, answers that I need come from within me with a clarion clarity. So that's what you want. You don't want your answer to come from the red robin or the goblin. Don't wait for the goblin. There's no woo-woo person out there who's going to send you the answer. And woo-woo spirituality kind of lends to that kind of luck and charm, and people then become tethered, waiting for their answer on the radio.
That's full hope.
It's total another delusion. It's another belief system. So the answers are within us. And guess what? There is no right answer at the end of the day anyway. So it's just what it is in the moment with the consciousness you have right now. And you're going to die anyway. So if you have that perspective at all times, life is buoyant, it's joyous, and you're not attached. You're just like, okay, you don't take yourself too seriously, you're just here, fully here and present. There's no blame, there's no resentment, there's no past, there's no future. Because you're just like, I'm here right now, and you don't take anything too seriously. So all these form-based things of wealth and success and competition and the medal and the trophy, you're sure you can collect them, but you laugh too. You laugh at them too, because you know that they're just empty of real meaning. They don't have real meaning.
This obviously this competitive nature that you speak of, is something that's instilled in every child pretty much around the world, no matter what culture, where you come from. There's very few places where there's, obviously there are some schools that sort of don't have competitive sports or are very careful about not, and they're considered progressive, but then often also laughed at by society, or even the parents who send their children to those progressive schools will then say, oh, but come on, let's be honest, the real world isn't like that. So we should really be teaching them a different way, a different style, and it's completely contradicted. Now, I wanted to talk to you about this concept that you have, that be the love you need. This idea of loving oneself, and that that you have to have compassion for yourself first, and then that's where it starts. I mean, I think that part a lot of people understand, but be the love you need is something more specific that I think it gets to the point. Could you explain that a little bit better, what that means?
Yeah. So we develop this false self, the ego, that then craves love and worth in all sorts of inauthentic ways, and we keep betraying ourselves. I haven't met a human who hasn't an ego to forage for love and worth in all sorts of manipulative ways, and not a human who is authentic. We've had to go back to our authentic self, but they always come to me full of masks, full of personas that we developed in childhood. So be the love you need, to use a cliche, yes, is something that we abandoned a long time ago, because we were the love we wanted. We thought we were amazing. We thought we were good enough. But we were told by culture and our unconscious empty parents, or relatively empty parents, that, hey, we needed to serve them. We needed to meet their expectations. We needed to check off their boxes. And because of that, we began to create these false selves. So now the spiritual path, the real warrior, goes back to, who am I really? Who am I without these masks? Who am I without needing the role? I am not. So for example, I'm a mother, but I had to really work on not using my child for my identity. That was a lot of the work I did, and I wrote books about it, that we cannot use our children to give us a sense of worth. We cannot use our partners to give us a sense of worth. We have to really enter a deep communion within ourselves, which means to go and heal ourselves from the childhood bullshit that we inherited, and to really claim ourselves again and to be authentic. And that is the spiritual path, and when you really enter and tap into that deep communion with yourself, and a deep celebration of who it is you are, with all your follies and all your weaknesses, there is no such thing as a perfectly whole person. You then actually untether from the others in terms of wanting them to fill you up. So now we don't use relationships transactionally. Now we have the potential to enter oneness relationships with others, transcendent love with others. Most of us, for the most part, because we're empty and hungry inside, are entering transactional relationships with others, which is why divorce is a bitch, right? You love the person and suddenly you can't stand the person. Why? Because it was never true freaking love. It wasn't. It was conditional. It was transactional, because you were seeking something from the other. And when the other stopped giving it, or something happened in the relationship, that's it. You don't need them anymore, because you wanted them for a function within yourself that you didn't give yourself. And that's why we get angry with our children when they don't follow our ways. That's why we get angry with our friends. Certainly, that's why we have torrid divorces. We don't need to have torrid divorces if there was true unconditional love, right?
But it's not that complicated also to say that, all children need is unconditional love and boundaries. That's it, right?
Yeah, and you don't even have to say boundaries, because love comes with boundaries. Yeah, go ahead.
You don't need to write books about it, but literally, that children need unconditional love and boundaries. Maybe you need to write books about, self-help books about how to give your children unconditional love. I don't know.
But that's what my books are about. My book, The Conscious Parent, was the first book that talked about how parents are conditional, and parents did not like that. That was the big pushback I got, because I exposed to parents that the only reason you had children was to mitigate your big fat ego. And they were like, no. I said there's a biological imperative to have children for sure, but not to create these puppets and trophies that we're doing. That's
well, it's exactly teaching parents how to give unconditional love to and boundaries. I mean, it's actually weirdly makes parenting a hell of a lot easier if you're armed with those two concepts.
But
I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't. When I had kids, I mean, I'm now older. Mine are 20 and 19 and 12, and I'm certainly when I had kids, I certainly didn't. Well, I definitely wasn't aware of the concept of unconditional love and boundaries. I mean, because to me it makes so much sense and it's so obvious.
Because you weren't in that state of unconditional love and boundaries with yourself.
No, absolutely not. Or with anyone else. It was all transactional. Everything was transactional. It was all a hell of a mess. But I mean, as you say, you only get to that point where if you're lucky, I suppose.
Well, when you work on yourself and you heal yourself, then you don't need your kid to be anything for you, right? Yeah. But we're only having children so we can show off on Facebook and we can send them to a prestigious college so that we feel good about ourselves. And that's what my work exposes to parents is what, if you're doing it all for yourself, you're going to create another rendition of yourself, and your child is going to grow up as one more generation of emptiness and inauthenticity. So that's how generational pain gets continued.
Yeah. It's funny. I've heard people talk about having children as their own immortality.
Right.
That, that if you think that do gods exist and, what makes a god is that they're immortal. And the fact that if the closest we get to being godly is by having children and being immortal, living on through our children. And when I hear that, I think of that. I've heard it said more than once in different ways. I've heard it said that clearly before, but I've also, when I hear what you've just said and what you're saying, I mean, it makes complete sense. But this is it's such a monumental problem, Dr. Shefali, that it mind boggles, because what's so hard is to love unconditionally with the thought of feeling completely hopeless with the fact that there isn't a solution because we're too far gone. In which case, can I stop the earth and get off now? I mean, that's what happens, right? So you fear that might be your reaction.
Yeah, but you first have wisdom to understand that the human mind is really quite immature. Now, people are going to so not be happy with this podcast. Just watch, because the human mind wants to think it's the best of the best, the most evolved species ever born. But I don't see any other species destroying the earth in literally 35 years, in the past 35 years as we have. I mean, our insatiable ego, our demented way of looking at the world because we want to dominate the world is a sickness. We don't live in interdependent community like other animal species who live in their pods and their tribes and in their little clan. We've gone way out of our lane, out of a great grand delusion of utter narcissistic arrogance, and it is deadly. We saw it in our president lately. I mean, but we have a lot of those around, a lot of his clones around. And it is extremely dangerous to the planet and to women, to children, and to other men. But this is where we're going. And we think that should be ossified and pedestalized and deified, And it's just the opposite. It should be blasphemized and ridiculed and taken off the pedestal right now. But we don't have wisdom. We have only smarts and money and competition and greed. We don't have enough wisdom in the world, and wisdom is thwarted. My books, I'm sorry to say, are wise books, but they're not popular books, right? They attack the status quo. And that's why I'm like scrambling to get my word out there, because I know that wisdom is the only way forward. But people want to be entertained, they want to make money, they want to look sexy, and they want to get younger. It's all of the ego. And the only way out of this delusion is the mind of the wise, which says, let go of your ego. The only way to return to sanity is to stop production, stop proliferation, stop pregnancy. Like for a while, we got to stop. We got to stop for the sake of the earth. And we got to heal the earth. We got to heal our children and the earth. And what that means is we grown-ups need to get our shit together like now, already yesterday, But until we truly love, to love unconditionally would mean that we own our delusion, to stop our insatiable greed, to end production, end consumption, that's it, and take care of what's sick and ailing right now on earth. there is so much sick and ailing right now on earth. You know, I could not have, I have one daughter, and when I realized I couldn't have more children, I was faced with my insatiable ego, which said, oh, you're such an amazing parent. What, you're going to stop at one, right? Things like that, right? Or how could I not give my child a sibling? You know, all the bullshit that culture has taught us. And I looked at myself really squarely, and I told myself, you dare go and have a child now. You have one, don't be greedy, done. Now, I'm not going to blasphemize those who choose other ways, but I'm just speaking to the resistance we have to accept our limitations. Enough is enough. When is enough enough, right? When is enough enough? And there's no enough button on this earth right now. I mean, we're just going more and more out of control in every area.
But if you say, you know, okay, so we have to love the planet more. We have to love our children unconditionally more. We have to love, basically, unless you love yourself in the first instance, and you're in a state where you're content and happy and balanced and not not yearning and not not looking and seeking and all the rest. Unless you love yourself, then you can't love others. You can't love another. Therefore, so if we're in a state right now, which we are, and I'm with you on this, in a state where people kind of love themselves, but the definition of loving themselves is in the ego and is in whatever the trappings, the money, the product, whatever it is. But actually, genuine, deep down love, self-love, right? Which is so lacking in so many people, and it's just so lacking everywhere. How you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. I mean, where do you even begin to start to try and, you know what I'm talking about? I get 99.9% of people listening to this podcast won't have a clue what I'm trying to say.
I know, because they're asleep. So that's why I said when they hit rock bottom, we have a chance that the ego will shatter enough to go, okay, I need to find out who I am. The only goal in this life, if there's a goal, there's no goal really to life. The only goal is to just be here right now. But say we had a goal. The only goal is to learn how to be here fully present and be in oneness with yourself and each other. And we're completely missing this goal for calculus and stock markets and rocket science, which are wonderful hobbies to have. But we've missed the forest for the trees. The real goal is self-reclamation, is self-oneness, because through self-oneness, we will be one with each other. The reason we are not one with each other and we're waging wars in the name of God and in the name of money and in the name of whatever race is because we're severed from our own damn heart. So all the work begins here, right here. It's very simple. That's why I said it's the most simple, most profound thing in the world, but no one is doing it because we're caught up in the false self of greed and craving. And that's why people need to wake up to the fact that wisdom is what is the missing antidote. It's wisdom. It's not more science, it's wisdom. And people don't have wisdom.
What questions should people be asking themselves? I mean, as far as going on this quest to sort of, I guess, love oneself, find oneself, are there certain things that we should be literally stopping and asking ourselves on a daily basis as far as setting ourselves? What are they?
Well, I ask myself two fundamental questions as I move through my day. So the two fundamental questions I ask is, number one, is this choice I'm making coming from lack, spiritual impoverishment, or abundance? Number one. And 99% of my choices are coming from lack based in ego, based on what culture has told me, what I should be doing, what I need to be better at, all from my egoic self wanting love and worth. So I first check in. And the next thing I ask is, which time zone am I living in? Am I living in the past and the future, which is where most of us live? Or am I right here, right now? And when I come back to, okay, I'm freaking in the future, all our anxiety comes from the future. Because right here, right now, you're just going to live right here, right now. So then I come back to the present moment. And that's why I meditate. My medication is meditation, and I'm coming back to center every damn hour by the hour. And that's why I fully am here more and more each day as I evolve. Evolution to me is only one thing. Are you fully here? Are you here right now? And when you're here right now, you have to be one with yourself, because you can't be an ego. Ego is against presence. Presence and ego don't go together. So when you're in presence, you are without ego, meaning without an agenda, without the should, without the future, without the lack, without the imposition of cultural beliefs. You're just here right now, and you're meeting everybody with I'm here right now, hello, like a beginner's mind. And that is the most beautiful way to live. It's so simple, but no one can do it, because when we're completely abducted now by distractions, by drugs.
That's what I'm saying, self-deception.
And climbing ladders that go nowhere, a conveyor belt that just keeps going around. It's a cat chasing its tail. And no one can see it till the bubble is burst in your life. And when the bubble is burst, you wake up and you go, what the hell am I running after? What are we running after, right? The woman is relentlessly seeking beauty. For example, the man is relentlessly seeking power. There is no end to this. And you're missing the present moment. Right? That's why children are so amazing. The only reason I tell people to have children, if they're going to have children, is use those first 6 years to enter your presence. But we don't use it. We miss it because we're running back to the gym and we're running back to work, and children can bring, like animals, can bring us back to the present moment. But we're not even, quote unquote, using them for that. What a waste of having the damn child. Now that we've just brought more children into the world and more unhappiness, we missed the whole point of childhood, which is what I talk about in The Conscious Parent, that if you're not going to use this as a spiritual epiphany, freaking don't have another child. The earth doesn't need your child is not going to save the earth. Okay, don't think your child is saving the earth. Because we have that delusion that I'm going to raise an amazing child. We have yet to see the next Buddha. Where is the next Buddha, right? So we're just deluded.
I'm with you. I'm completely with you. Nodding. I'm just going to nod. I agree with everything you're saying.
So, Dr. Shefali, we're not going to have any more kids. Okay, that's a
hallelujah.
We agree with you on that one. But clearly, look, the world at large. It seems like it doesn't matter what culture, where in what country, what culture, people everywhere, and it seems almost the poorer the country, the more kids they have. I don't know, like that seems to be such a massive issue for us, is the overpopulation, that we are, we can't sustain, we can't even feed ourselves.
Exactly.
I don't know, I'm always hopeful that there's some solution that we can save ourselves, but have we gone too far? Is this?
Well, I think if enough wisdom minds got together, this would be if you ask me, okay, if you had all the money in the world, what would you do, right? How would you save the earth? I would say that I would create a wise council of the wisest, okay, which is only like 10 people on earth. But those wise people get to decide. And sad to say, we create regulations for the earth to start breathing. So sorry, couple generations, not too many children. We have to stop this. We are overpopulated. We cannot sustain. We stop the killing of the seas. We stop the killing of the rainforest. We need a wise council to tell big companies, no, sorry, no, we cannot. And the world and the world's economies and the world's corporations have to answer to the wise council. But we need a wise council that overrides the economic forums, and because the economic forums are after economies and after money. And as long as it's money-based, we will keep destroying the earth. And everything right now is money-based. Wisdom-based overlooks money. And it then looks for equity, it looks for justice, it looks for those who are the underdogs. That's where wisdom looks at, what wisdom looks at. But right now, our entire world is run by money and power. So until money and power is superseded by wisdom, we are going to continue to destroy. So if you gave me all the money in the world, I would create the wise council that overlooks all government agencies, and we answer to wisdom, to the wise elders. You know, that's who gets to decide how many more children the world can have, how many more companies, no more iPhones, right? No more this, no more versions of TV, no more new versions of anything. We live with what we have and we stop extra production. And then we start, you know, the decrease of the disruption and the decrease of the death. We slow it down at least. You know, we all go vegetarian for a long time. For you know, every Monday, everybody's vegetarian. You know, we create simple but feasible policies, which are so sensible. It's just clear what we need to do, but we need one force telling the whole world what to do.
But that's like saying that you're going to get a wise counsel that's going to teach the horse to drink. You know, you can lead it to water, but you can't make it drink. Why not start with the individual? As I was saying earlier, like, I'm amazed that the very basics of psychology and the very basics of like self-awareness and, you know.
Yeah, but the wise council will tell the schools that for 4 hours a day, you will teach psychology and health and social emotional learning and meditation. You see, we need somebody to institute this globally, right? You saw what happened with just the masks, the wearing masks. America couldn't even agree which, you know, where we can wear masks as a universal global whole. We couldn't agree on anything. So until we create a tidal wave, right, where it's ubiquitous, we're not, you asked me how are we going to do this? Only that. And I know it's not going to happen. So we're just talking, you know, over a glass of
if you were to create this wise council, which I can see, it almost seems like a little like Star Wars or something, like the Jedi Knights getting around with the smart wise council type of scenario. But a lot of sci-fi ideas and concepts you see in these books, sometimes there is a lot of truth in them.
The Matrix, they're based on metaphors that are ancient and they stand the test of time.
They do.
You know, but we're losing that now because we now covet and worship money and greed. We worship money and greed. So as long as we're worshiping that God, forget it.
Who would be on your wise council?
The spiritual masters, you know, and then we.
Do you have any names? Are there any?
I don't have many, but I'm going to produce them. No, I would have Eckhart Tolle, and I would have Byron Katie, and I would have you, and I would have, you know, beautiful souls that understand oneness, you know, that understand that life is not about greed and corruption and domination. There are enough beautiful minds, but we have to get them together as one. So what I see in my world, and I get frustrated by, and maybe I'm part of it, I don't know, is that even in just my world, the cool psychologist world, we're not getting together. Like we should be one, we should be together, you know, and that's what you're creating on your other forum. Yeah. We need a platform where our voices are in unison so that I'm not just Dr. Shefali, you know, speaking about what I care about. No, we all care about the same thing. And we need to let go of our individual egos and come together as one. But each one of us, and I'm sure I'm part of it, cares about, you know, my Instagram following, and that one cares about his Instagram following. Well, then we're feeding into the same system of separation and domination, right? We need to come together, let go our individual identities, and frickin' save this planet.
There you go. You heard it right there, Dr. Shefali. Doctor, before we let you go, we have something called Last Orders on the Shaken and Stirred show, which is pretty simple stuff. It's a bit of fun at the end. And quite frankly, I was going to say, after all that, I think I need a drink, but maybe I shouldn't have one. I'm not stopping. I'm going to deny myself. I'm going
to stay awake and present.
Awake and present. I'm no longer going to drown my sorrows. We're going to no longer call this the Shaken and Stirred show. We're going to have to rename it completely.
Awaken Alert.
The Awaken Alert show. There you go, people. As of now, first of all, favorite place in the world. Where's your happy place, Dr. Shefali? Where do you
anywhere by the ocean, I can be happy. Yes.
For me, I'm an ocean person too. If you could swap places with anyone or anything for a day, who or what would it be?
A bird. I would want to see the world from an aerial perspective, and just the capacity to, the idea I have, and I'm projecting onto the bird, is that it's so lovely to fly, but maybe it's a pain in the neck. I don't know.
That's so funny. You had that answer like that. That wasn't even, you didn't even have to think for a second. It was like, I'm a bird. I'm like, whoa, okay. That's really fun. So, you know, if anyone would, this is a complete, this seems like a ridiculous question for you, but it's something we ask everybody. In the movie of your life, is there anybody you've ever thought of who would perhaps play you?
No, I don't even know what you mean by like somebody who looks like me or some. I don't know.
Isn't that great?
I'm a weird character. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yourself.
Myself. Yes.
You know, it's so funny. We've asked this question to,
and it stumps everybody.
Everybody has an idea, loves a question, jumps on. I knew as soon as I read the question, I'm like,
I was like,
you would not know, want, or have anything to do with it. And it's great. It's almost like I'm like,
so me. Yeah, I'd be like, what a stupid question. Like,
yeah, it's a really stupid question. But also, what it does effectively, it was done as the question originally was formatted and thought up as a sort of. It was actually a kind of. It's rather ironic because it's delivered in a sort of serious manner. A friend of mine came up with it when I was talking to them to basically expose the ego.
Yeah, and that's why I'm like, I don't even think like that.
I know. Well, obviously,
how dare you ask me that question?
But now we're kind of busted if anyone actually listens to.
I know. We have to change the question as of Dr. Shefali. She's changed the name.
I'm like, I'm not going to answer that ego-based question. You're not going to get me that way.
No, the whole point was it was an ironic question that you're thank God finally somebody's come up with a sensible answer to it. Anyway, thanks.
There you go. Sorry. There you go. Well, we were waiting till this moment to get rid of the question. Now that it's been answered correctly for the first time, we can be done with it. Thank you. And then this is also kind of an interesting question, but it's I think you've already kind of answered it. This is a question we ask a lot of people as well. So we have 3 questions we ask everyone. The first 2, which you've answered, were just for you. This one is, what gets your goat and what floats your boat? But I think we kind of know now what gets your goat.
What gets my goat? What is it?
Well, it seems like greed and, you know, society and the way just life itself, the way people handle themselves, this lack of love and self-love seems to clearly get your goat.
Yeah, but I've learned to be zen with it. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like, I'm cursing, like, what the hell is wrong with humanity? What is wrong? We are not smart. We're so dumb. How can people think we're smart? Yes. So if you catch me bitching, it'll be about those things. Yes. And what's the other one? What floats my boat?
What floats your boat?
Conversations like this, like connected conversations, awake people, awake minds, curious minds, people who are irreverent, who can see through the bubble, who can burst their bubble, who can talk honestly and transparently. You know, that's what that's why I'm here, you know, to have conversations about the bullshit around us. And I want to be with people who can see through that.
Amazing. Final question, simple enough. Shaken or stirred, Dr. Shefali?
I think stirred. Stirred gently, and then to the point of breaking the whole glass. Keep stirring till you break it. Yeah, I'm a shit stirrer. I like to call myself a stirrer of shit, but I do it gently, lovingly, but I keep going at it every day.
Oh, I know the feeling.
Wow. What a surprise. What a charm. How amazing. Dr. Shefali, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Radical Awakening. You can buy it off Dr. Shefali's website, which is drshefali.com. And I highly recommend that, if nothing else. And you have all kinds of other great books as well, as I mentioned at the beginning, including Conscious Parent, which I have, which is amazing, and The Awakened Family. Thank you so much for all your brilliance. I do hope, I'm looking forward to speaking to you again soon, and hopefully soon we can actually meet in person. You know, that would be the next thing, which I know we sort of can do now too, but it's been a little bit more complicated than we would like. Thanks again.
Surprise! When Nigel walks into the room, he's only 5'3". I don't know how tall you are, but
I'm not even. I'm so small. I see Nigel on TV, so you can't stump me. Okay. You haven't seen me probably, but we will meet soon, and I look forward to that day. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Thank you very much for listening. That is Shaken and Stirred. We will be back next week with another podcast and another fantastic guest. And stay safe.
See ya.